once again, good evening. Being program chair, I knew that somewhere along the line, we would need to find someone to talk about the great solar, the Great American Solar Eclipse of 2017. I says, who could we get to do something like that? Yeah, guess what? We have somebody in our organization that knows a little bit about eclipses. He saw his first one in 1963, and in his lifetime he has seen a total of 10 total solar eclipses, 4 annular eclipses, 6 partial eclipses, 15 the total lunar eclipses, I believe. He saw the transit of Venus twice and 6 transits of Mercury. So he knows a little bit about them, and he's gone practically all over the world to see them. And like I say, it's a great event. I know everybody's excited about it. Even doing outreach, the libraries are excited about it, and everybody wants to get a glimpse of that. So without, just like to introduce, everybody knows this man, and this should be a great prelude to the great American total solar eclipse of 2017, Mr. Ken Bertin.
Cut it out, Gary.
I thought you were Gary.
Okay, eclipses. Mark has elaborated on where I've been and what I've done. Not where I've been, but I've been all over the world seeing these eclipses. I really didn't see my first solar eclipse until about 1971, and I really didn't see it very well. But in 1991, I went to the Baja Peninsula and saw the great eclipse of Ceres 136. I'll talk about it in a minute. This presentation actually is going to be about eclipses themselves. Actually, I call this presentation Syzygy. And the reason I call it Syzygy is that is when 3 objects in space line up. And I've always been interested in that. And actually, my actual email is SYZYGIE because I couldn't get the Y. And so that's it is a great passion for me, as is astronomy. I started studying astronomy when I was 5 years old, and I just turned 71 last week. Oh, that's
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much, but I need a towel as fast as I can get it.
Oh.
Thanks. Hopefully it doesn't short out.
Just us two, Ken.
This presentation is approximately 43 minutes long, and we will have some time to ask questions about it. I would appreciate it if you didn't during it. There's some nice things that I put together here, and I'm actually pretty proud of this presentation. I hope that you enjoy it. This will highlight the great eclipse, American eclipse of August the 21st, 1917, at the end of, 2017, at the end of this eclipse, this presentation, I will just discuss eclipses and the resulting other syzygies during this. So many of these photos, the better photos, are from a man named Fred Astanak, who's known as the Mr. Eclipse, whereas I've seen 10. He's seen over 30, and been everywhere from Antarctica to everywhere that you can imagine on Earth. And I've asked him if I could use some of his photos, and he's spectacular at that. He's a good dear friend of mine. With that being said, let's get started. Okay, let's discuss the word syzygy. Syzygy is when 3 objects line up in space. The word comes from the Greek word which meant when one lined up with a pair of yoked oxen. How this word turned into a reference to things that happened in space is probably only known to the ancients. Pictured here are several types of syzygies. The first photo is of the moon moving in front of an apparent smaller object, in this case Saturn. This is called an occultation. It occurs when the apparent, do whatever you need to do with that, that's crazy. It occurs when an apparent larger object moves in front of an apparent smaller object. The next is actually, you get to see this very often, the star Aldebaran, which is the eye of the Taurus, is being occulted by the moon.
and of course stars are a point in life, and they just sort of blink out. And you'll get to see those. There's a couple of those still scheduled, I believe, this year. It is on the ecliptic, therefore you can be able to see it. By the way, before I go any further, I want to just mention one thing. My brother-in-law and my sister are here tonight, and I'm just thrilled to be able to give this presentation, particularly in front of them. And some of my old high school classmates are also here tonight. I want to thank them for attending. Of course, the next photo is of the moon. Of course, is the moon moving in front of the sun, completely covering the surface. The surface is known as the photosphere, and a total solar eclipse. The next picture is when the moon is too far away from the earth to completely cover the sun. This is known as an annular eclipse, annular meaning annulus or ring. Will also be discussed in a moment. Then the next photo is of this is of a lunar eclipse. This is a total lunar eclipse when the earth passes between the sun and the moon, and also it will be discussed in a moment. The next photo is of a transit of the planet Venus across the face of the sun. This is when an apparent smaller object passes in front of a larger one, apparent larger one that is. The following photo is of the planet Mercury in transit across the sun. You can see how small Mercury is. That little dot right there, actually, it doesn't even compare to the sunspot that's coming around. The last photo is another occultation. Another transit. And these are the moons of Jupiter actually moving in front of the planet. You can see the shadow being cast by Ganymede and Europa. Here you go. Let us discuss the types of eclipses. The first type of eclipse is a lunar eclipse. There are two types of lunar eclipses. The first is known as a total lunar eclipse. This occurs when the moon is totally immersed within the Earth's umbral shadow. What occurs is the moon turns to the color red. This phenomenon is caused by the sun's light passing entirely through the Earth's atmosphere. You can see this effect every morning and every evening when the sun or the moon is near the horizon. It appears to turn orange or red. But either of those objects are overhead. There is only about 90 miles of atmosphere for the light to reach to one's eyes. At the horizon, there are a couple of thousand miles of atmosphere that have to travel and traverse before landing on your eyeball. Look at a rainbow. The outside of the rainbow is red, while the inside is blue. The reason the red is on the outside is because the red is the longest wavelengths of light, of visible light. Actually, interestingly enough, the reason the sky is blue is due to blue being among the shortest wavelengths of visible light. And because of that, it is scattered first. The only wavelengths of light that get through to us when the objects are at the horizon are the longer wavelengths of orange and red. As said, the atmosphere is a couple of thousand miles thick at the horizon. The sun's light has to traverse all the way through the Earth's atmosphere to get to the moon during a lunar eclipse, allowing only the longest waves, or the light red waves, to reach it. The second type of lunar eclipse is a penumbral eclipse. The sun, the earth, and the moon are not perfectly aligned during the penumbral eclipse. The moon misses the Earth's umbra and travels through the much fainter penumbra. About 1 in 3 of all lunar eclipses are penumbral. They are, however, easy to miss because when they happen, the eclipsed moon tends to look very similar to a full moon. In fact, it is virtually impossible to observe the start and end of a penumbral lunar eclipse, even with telescopes. Penumbral eclipses that involve the darker central portion of the Earth's penumbral shadow are normally visible to the naked eye. Trained observers can usually see penumbral eclipses. Here is an interesting side note. It was during a lunar eclipse that Aristotle determined that the Earth is a sphere in 342 BCE and published his findings in Seattle. No doubt this work is probably the document that shut down European scientific study of consequence until the 1500s. Another story for another day. The second eclipse, the first type of solar eclipse, is known as a partial solar eclipse. Sometimes the moon is not in perfect alignment with the sun, and enough to either cover the photosphere nor fall inside the sun's diameter. Also, if the observer is outside the path of totality, one will observe a partial eclipse. In fact, in Michigan, you will see a partial eclipse here. The second type of solar eclipse is an annular eclipse. When the moon is farther than 235,000 miles from us, and it is on the node of the plane of the Earth's orbit, it is not large enough to totally block our view of the sun. The sun's photosphere, and appears to go inside the body of the sun. This is not a naked eye event, and one should utilize solar glasses to observe it. The photosphere is in fact as bright as any one point on the whole surface. Should you observe any partial phase of the solar eclipse without protection for your eyes, you will burn a hole in your retina. Again, the total solar eclipse is a naked eye event, since the corona is no brighter than a full moon. Should you decide to watch totality with solar glasses, you will miss the event. The star of all eclipses is the total solar eclipse. When the moon is closer to us than 235,000 miles, it is on the node of the plane of the Earth's orbit. It is large enough to totally block our view of the sun's photosphere. This phenomenon is enjoyed by us because the sun is 400,000 times the size of the moon and 400 times farther away. They are virtually the same apparent side. The shadow moves across the Earth illustrated here. So, if you are within that spot, you get to see totality. There are many aspects of the sun which are invisible to us because of the great brightness of the photosphere itself. Only during a total solar eclipse are we able to see the atmosphere of the sun, which is known as the corona. We are also able to see the prominences, also known as solar flares. We also miss out on the chromosphere. We will discuss these three aspects shortly. There are things called shadow bands caused by the refraction of the Earth's atmosphere. They are quite subtle and appear to cross the ground, not unlike you see when the sun is inside a swimming pool, as the light is inside the swimming pool. These bands are caused by atmospheric effect that actually causes the stars to shine. Very compelling to look at it, but if you watch it for too long, you'll miss the eclipse. Because of the difference in the brightness of the chromosphere, prominences, corona, a camera cannot do them justice. We are fortunate to have eyes that can see the entire range of the visible spectrum all at once. Therefore, you can see lots of pictures of solar eclipses and never get an inkling of how spectacular the naked eye view is actually. The total solar eclipse is a naked eye event, since the corona is no brighter than the full moon, as I said before. Should you decide to again watch totality with solar glasses, you'll miss it. There's a dynamic, here's the dynamic of a total solar eclipse. First, the shadow of the moon is racing across the Earth at about 1,500 miles per hour. The effect is stunning. As the sun disappears, shadow bands appear on the ground, as you saw in the prior example. Next, Bailey's beads appear at the rim of the moon, named for an astronomer named Bailey, not Dave, by the way, for those of you who remembers here. They are the sun's light passing through the mountains of the moon. The final happening totality is known as the diamond ring effect, which is the last vestige of the photosphere appearing through the uneven terrain of the moon. When my wife found out that there were beads and diamond rings involved, she became very interested in the event. Next, the corona can only be seen during an eclipse, since it is millions of times less bright than the surface of the sun. It starts to become visible in the last vestiges, and seeing the last vestiges of the sun's photosphere. Concurrently, the lower atmosphere of the sun, called the chromosphere, you can see it here, this red, it's red around it here. Very pretty, very compelling. It's a brilliant reddish-orange color, and very red prominences appear, which are flares jumping from the sun. Stars and planets appear, and the temperature head, which has been dropping steadily as the sun is being covered, suddenly plummets. The overall effect is stunning. As totality ends, the reverse effect occurs, the chromosphere appears, the diamond ring appears, Bailey's beads show again, and the corona fades away. One can remove their solar glasses and or solar colored from their telescope or binoculars when the corona appears. Actually, the diamond ring effect is so short that it's certainly safe to look at as well, and I suggest that. Now to review what I explained. The first photo is of the Daly's beads, the last vestiges of the photosphere moving through the mountains of the moon. Here's the photo you saw. Here are some aspects of solar eclipses at totality which are important to note. Remember, I said that you can't see the corona with the photosphere present. This photo shows the corona. Again, it is no brighter than a full moon. The corona can stretch 10 to 15 solar diameters, and it's at its solar maximum, and it is even more spectacular than we could ever show here. Sun goes through 11-year cycles of activity. Right now we're moving into the low point. You can see polar brushes. The temperature of this corona is upwards of 1.5 million degrees Fahrenheit. Interestingly enough, the surface is only about 9,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The corona is produced obviously from the interior of the sun. The next photo is of the chromosphere, sorry about that, in the brilliant color red. It is the inner atmosphere, again, only visible during a total solar eclipse. The next photo is the area of the prominences. A camera cannot see both the prominences again or chromosphere at the same time as a corona, but the human eye can. This is the point of actually going to see a solar eclipse. And you can see that the prominences are very large. Here is a comparative size of a particularly large one of the Earth. Let's start with the definition of many aspects of the viewing of the eclipse. The corona is the outermost layer of the solar atmosphere. It's made of tenuous ionized gas called plasma, with temperatures up to a million degrees Fahrenheit. The prominences are structures in the corona consisting of cool plasma supported by magnetic fields. Prominences seen on the gifts are known as filaments. Polar plumes are bright structures of outflowing gas which occur along the magnetic field lines in coronal holes. Helmet streamers are large cap-like structures with long pointed peaks which usually overlie sunspots in active regions. And the last is coronal loops are found around sunspots and in active regions. These structures are associated with the closed magnetic field lines that connect magnetic regions of the solar surface. Here is a solar eclipse, first from naked eye view and second telescopically. So you just sit back and watch this. You can see I'm actually right here. Fred Espenak is wandering out over there. And watch now these views as how it appears first from the ground and then with the telescope. You can just watch this part. You can notice that it starts to get a little darker over here, as you'll see. And it is, as the moon is running across the Earth again at about 1,500 miles per hour. Actually, at center line, it can be moving as much as 2,000 miles per hour, and will be when it gets to the point when it gets to the middle part of the United States. It'll slow down to about 1,400, but in the West Coast, it'll be moving relatively rapidly. We can start seeing now as the sky is starting to dim as it goes.
Is the moon moving from left to right or right
The moon
to
is
left?
moving right across like this,
Right to left.
right to left.
Where was this film taken?
This one is actually in China in 2008. Yes. It was near the Gobi Desert. I don't remember it to be in the Gobi Desert. But here I am. I'm actually taking the video on a telephoto over here. And Fred is clicking away there.
So was that like a New Year's Eve thing? You kissed at New Year's Eve?
So say it again. I can't hear you. That was a joke, I can tell.
A little joke.
You can start seeing that the corona is starting to appear a bit, as you can see it, but it's very subtle. And the moon is now, you can see how dark it is over here now. And you can actually make out a sphere of the moon itself coming across. You can see how the sky is all darkened. What happens during the eclipse is all around you, it looks like twilight. And you can see the shadow now coming in.
Is there a filter on your camera now?
Yes, at this moment there is a filter on the camera. You know something now that I'm thinking of it? No, there is not a filter on the camera. This is the wide angle. The other one has a filter. But look how dark it is here. And we're just getting there now. We're getting to diamond ring effect shortly. There it is. You can see the shadow coming in. And look at the shadow. Around this is the shadow. And there you have the total solar eclipse.
How long does that last for?
This particular one was 2 minutes and 40 seconds, about the same length of the one that we're having here.
And it's totally eclipsed now.
It is.
Why is it not covered?
It is completely covered, and this is just the remnants of it. This is a lot darker than it looks in the camera.
Corona.
Corona, this is the corona, and the moon is right in the middle there. And you can see the sphere now. Very,
Why
very
does
clear.
the moon look whitish color instead of dark?
Well, the white is the corona. The moon is just barely visible to that. The moon is right in the middle. It's washed out because the corona is bright enough to do that. Here you go. You can see the circle. Okay, you're going to see in the other event, in the other picture, a little different. But you can see the sphere, and as it's starting to move out, okay, you see how dark it is over here. And again, all the way around you is that, and the stars are out, by the way. This isn't picking up the stars, but that's okay. If you're looking at the stars, you're missing the show.
This upward curve in the darkness, is that the shadow of the moon?
This is the shadow of the moon right here.
On the atmosphere.
Did you feel it get chillier? Because
Yeah, oh yeah, drops dramatically.
Said in 2 minutes.
Yeah, this is 2 minutes.
Well, over an hour.
Well, the eclipse takes 3 hours total.
Okay.
And you can see again the curvature, and it's starting to brighten up over here, right? This is a very, very good representation of what you're really looking at.
So the whole sky doesn't get black.
No, that's correct. The whole sky does not. The horizon stays light where the sun is not being covered by the moon. There you go to diamond ring effect, and you can see the shadow dancing out again, and we are back to daylight. Very compelling. This is a nice example of what you would see, but it again, like I've told you before, it doesn't do it justice.
How far is the horizon, given?
Depends on the size. It depends on the how much the sun is covered by the moon at that point in time. So the horizon is, if it's darker if it's longer eclipse because you're immersed more into the shadow.
Yeah, but this one's going to be 70 miles wide.
That's correct.
Totality. If you're right in the center of it, around 35 miles is where the horizon
You're
is.
still going to see the horizon.
You will still see it.
You absolutely see the horizon, absolutely, no question. You see the horizon when we had a 6-minute eclipse too. So, all right. So now this is the partial phases, obviously, of it, and this is of course filtered for obvious reasons. And this will start to pick up in a moment. It's not. As you can see, it keeps taking another chunk out of the. And this is what you'll see. You'll see this in Michigan, by the way. You will see this actually occur. And by the way, if I don't forget, everybody who's here will get a pair of solar glasses, by the way. I said that because at 71 years old, I may have forgotten. This is a little faster than you think it is, by the way. But again, it's all compelling. It's very, very cool to watch. And again, it's too early to take off the filter. By the way, if I had plugged in the sound in this, you would have heard Fred Espenak yelling out the time factor. So,
Did you say what percentage can we get here?
We will get about 70% here, approximately.
70% coverage?
yes, correct. A little wind. Now we're getting right to the front, to totality, getting close. A little bit of wind. Now what you probably hear is Fred say take off solar filters at some point right along. You can see Bailey's beads is starting to form down here. It's of course much more dynamic, of course, than with your eyes and such, but we're almost there. You can see again, this is Bailey's beads, where the the mountains of the moon, which are not even taken off the filter. And there you go, diamond ring effect. Whoa. There's the diamond ring effect, there's the diamond ring, and this is the outline, so it looks like a diamond ring.
What size telescope are you using, or was that?
This was a 1400 millimeter lens, which is effectively it's a camera, and it was with the telescope. It's 1400, and a 1400 millimeter lens is effectively for video 4200 millimeters. There's your corona sphere. You can see a prominence starting to come out. There's just a little bit of enthusiasm from the group. This is really a very, very nice picture of the corona. But again, you are not going to be seeing this with your naked eye. You are going to see this corona all out here. And the camera just doesn't do it. But you can't see the prominences in the chromosphere when the corona is fully blown like that. And we'll throw it up there. You can see as we go out. These are known as polar brushes at each of the ends of these poles of the sun, actually. And you can see this fantastic event. The corona is, again, about 1.5 million degrees Fahrenheit. And the only time that scientists could study it before the advent of some of the solar telescopes and such was during an eclipse.
So you have the solar filter off at this point?
Oh yeah, the solar filter's off. This is a naked eye event.
When do you take it off?
Just as you hit diamond ring effect. As soon as diamond ring effect takes it, you can take it off, and you can, if you don't want to look right at the sun, you can put a little off. Yes? Question?
Question.
Go ahead.
If the filter was on now, would we be seeing total black?
You would see total black, is right. Because the corona is no brighter than a full moon. So go take your solar glasses out tonight and take a look at the moon and see if you can see it. And there we go, diamond ring effect
Now
on
the
the first.
filter goes back on.
Now we put the filter back on, and there you go to the other end of the thing. So this is a pretty good representation for you to see, and gives you kind of an idea of what the total solar eclipse is about. I'm going to tell you the one thing that was said.
Then why don't you turn off the sound?
The one thing I want you to know that the first question that is usually asked after the event is, when's the next one?
Yep.
When is the next one, Ken?
Next one is 1919, I believe.
2019.
I got 29. I'm so old.
We're thinking of Paddington's eclipse.
Bear with me. I'll have to look it up for you. I'm not certain that. I know that in 2024 we will have one that comes very close to us, and it'll be a 4-minute eclipse.
How long is the totality to last for this one?
Totality is 2 minutes at the West Coast, and 2 minutes and 40 seconds approximately at Carbondale and Nashville. It's a little longer. Okay. Why do solar eclipses occur? Well, the moon is 2,160 miles in diameter, or 3,500 miles in diameter, kilometers in diameter, kilometers and go on. The sun is 864,000 miles, or 1,400,000 kilometers in diameter. The sun, therefore, is 400 times the diameter of the moon. The moon is 220,000 miles, or 354,000 kilometers distant from the Earth at its closest approach, which is called perigee, and 260,000 miles, or 420,000 kilometers distant from the Earth at its farthest approach, or apogee. The sun varies its distance from the Earth about 91 million miles, or 146 million kilometers at perihelion, and 94 million miles and 151,000 kilometers at aphelion. Thus, the sun is about 400 times farther from us, as is the moon. Hence, to our eyes, the apparent size of the sun and the moon are the same, as I've said before. How often do eclipses occur? Why not twice a month? In order for eclipses to occur, the sun, earth, and moon need to line up. The moon's orbital plane is tilted about 5 degrees relative to the Earth's solar orbital plane.
Hence, the moon is usually somewhat above or below that plane. In order for the eclipse to occur, two things must happen. First, it either has to be crossing the plane at the ascending or descending node, and second, either it has to directly be between the sun and the earth, and in case of a solar eclipse, or the earth has to be between the sun and the moon in the case of a lunar eclipse. There is as many as 7 eclipses in 1 year. There are always at least 2 solar eclipses. Not total, but 2 solar eclipses, and 5 is the maximum. There are as many as 3 lunar eclipses, but there can be a year where there are none. Saros. All eclipses, lunar and solar, follow a sequence. Each eclipse is repeated 18 years, 10 or 11 days later, 1/3 around the Earth. Each series or Saros moves northerly or southerly along the Earth each time it occurs. This is called progression, and eventually moves off the Earth completely. Generally, there are about 70 eclipses in the Saros cycle. It was known to the early Chaldeans of ancient Babylon, by the way. The earliest record of a solar eclipse is 10/22/2134 before the Common Era. Edmund Halley called the eclipse cycle Saros in 1691, although erroneous use of words, it stuck. Historical events. In 528, 584 BCE, the 5-year war between the Lydians and Medes ended due to a solar eclipse. Thales of Miletus predicted the eclipse. That is probably the most famous eclipse of ancient times, and again it ended the 5-year war between the Lydians and the Medes. These 2 Middle Eastern armies were locked in battle when the day was turned into night, quote unquote. The sight of this total solar eclipse was startling enough to cause both nations to stop fighting at once. They agreed to a peace treaty, cementing in the bond of a double marriage. The eclipse was predicted again by Thales, and the celebrated Greek astronomer and philosopher he was, but the predictions was probably not known to the warring nations. The earliest record of the solar eclipse comes from ancient China. The date of the eclipse, usually given as October 22nd, 2134 BC, is not certain. Historians know the account was written sometime within the period of about 200 years. During that time, there were several total eclipses visible in China. The 2134 BC eclipse is simply the best guess. Ancient Chinese document Xu Chang records that the moon and the sun did not meet harmoniously. The story goes that 2 royal astronomers, Hai and Ho, had neglected their duties and failed to predict the event. Widespread Oriental belief held that the eclipse was caused by an invisible dragon devouring the sun. Great noise and commotion drumming, archers shooting arrows in the sky and the like, were customarily produced to frighten away the dragon and restore daylight. When the eclipse took place, the emperor was caught unprepared. Even though the sun returned, the angry ruler ordered the astronomers beheaded. According to legend, the royal astronomers Ho and Hai dedicated too much of their time consuming alcohol, failed to predict the forthcoming eclipse. Traditionally, the solar eclipse recorded in Xu Chang, the historical classic text, was regarded as having occurred in the 3rd millennium. The eclipse of Abraham in Canaan, 1533 BCE. Eclipses were also mentioned in sacred books such as the Bible. One of the best known references to eclipses appears in the book of Genesis, which involves the journey of Abraham into Canaan. And when the sun was going down, great darkness fell upon him. It is possible to relate this description with a computed solar eclipse occurring on May 9th, 1533 BCE. The homecoming of Odysseus, 1178 BCE. There is some evidence to suggest that Odysseus from Homer's Odyssey could have returned to his Penelope on the day of the eclipse. Basically, we have 3 cases of evidence of this hypothesis. Plutarch interpreted the passage in the 20th book of that masterpiece of literature to a poetic description of a total solar eclipse at Odysseus' return. A century ago, astronomers estimated that such an eclipse occurred over the Greek islands are on April 16th, 1178 BC, and the only in the region close to the estimated date of the fall of Troy. Recently, astronomical references have two scientists who state the total solar eclipse of 1178 coincided with the homecoming of Odysseus again, rejoined Penelope after the Trojan War. Almost all classic scholars are skeptical of this correlation. If there was an eclipse, Homer must have had it in mind when he wrote this of a seer prophesizing the death of Penelope, waiting suitors in their entrance into Hades. The story does not mention an eclipse, but there are omens and poetic descriptions of total solar eclipses. The Old Testament eclipse of 763 BCE, one passage of the Bible says that on that day, says the Lord God, I will make the sun go down at noon and darken the earth in broad daylight. The corresponding eclipse should have occurred on June 15, 763 BCE, and cross-reference is provided by an Assyrian historical chronicle known as the Eponym Canon. In Assyria, each year was named after a ruling official, and the year's events were recorded under the name in the canon. Under the year corresponding to 763 BCE, the scribe at Nineveh wrote this simple line: insurrection of the city of Assur in the month of Sivan, the sun was eclipsed. Historians have been able to use this eclipse to improve the chronology of early biblical times. And the last of these is the Archilochus eclipse of 648 BCE. It's believed that the Greek lyric poet Archilochus saw a total solar eclipse which happened on April 6, 648 BC. Nothing there is beyond hope, nothing that can be sworn impossible, nothing wonderful, since Zeus, father of the Olympians, made night from midday, hiding the light from the shining sun, and sowed fear amongst men. Solar eclipse of July 28, 1851 was the first useful photo of the total eclipse. The earliest scientifically useful photograph of the total solar eclipse was made by Julius Berkowski of the Royal Observatory in Königsberg, Prussia, on July 28, 1851, is said. This was the first occurrence that an accurate photographic image of the solar eclipse was recorded. In 1845, Hippolyte Fizeau and Leon Foucault did photograph it, but it failed to get a discernible image of the sun's outer atmosphere. One of the most important eclipses in history happened in 1919. This particular eclipse cut a path across South America and the Atlantic Ocean and landed on the west coast of Africa. Within the island in the Gulf of Guinea off the west coast of Africa was a team of astronomers armed with telescopes and cameras and led by English physicist Sir Arthur Eddington. Albert Einstein had published his groundbreaking paper on general relativity in 1915. One prediction made by the theory was the bending of light in a strong gravitational field. This is called gravitational lensing. In 1917, the Astronomer Royal England, Sir Frank Watson, realized that a total solar eclipse would set up a perfect experiment to test relativity. And the May 29, 1919 eclipse was the best candidate. Fortunately, the war had ended, so the travel was much eased. The sun would be in the constellation of Taurus near the famous Hyades cluster. Eddington took photographs of the cluster, made exact measurements of each star's position. In May, with his crew, he camped on Pacific. During the eclipse, the astronomers worked frantically to photograph the stars nearest the sun. With his valuable exposures in hand, Eddington sailed home to England and measured the star images on glass plates. Precise measurements of the stars, especially Capitoria, showed a defiant deflection from its true position, proving one component of relativity, gravitational lensing, to be true. Einstein became an overnight celebrity. Let's talk about the eclipse of 8/21/17. The eclipse of this is to occur on across the United States on August 21st, 2017. It will be the first totally solar eclipse observed in the continental United States since 1979. It will stretch across the country from Oregon to South Carolina. The question is, where to go? Do you go? In order to see totality, you must be on the path that's marked on the map. You will get to see the eclipse elsewhere in the United States, but only at totality along that line. It would not be wise to drive to the line on the day of the eclipse. There will be plenty of people who think that's a good idea. Every novice at all interested will be on the road that day. There are a lot of major cities along the path, including Nashville, Tennessee, Casper, Wyoming, Columbia, South Carolina, Hamlin, Kansas, East St. Louis, Illinois, Carbondale, Illinois, amongst others. The eclipse starts in Oregon, moves through Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina. In order to get the longest, best view, it is best to be on the center line. The eclipse at its maximum will be approximately 2 minutes and 40 seconds. But along the center line, it will be 2 minutes. Along the center line, it will be 2 minutes long, where it touches the coast of Oregon, reaching its maximum length near Carbondale, Illinois, and will still be 2 minutes and 30 seconds long when it leaves the coast of South Carolina. Obviously, the most important thing to consider is where it will be clear enough to see the sun. Fortunately, weather prospects for summer are still pretty good. What you might have to drive along the eclipse path to catch up with areas of minimal clouds, the recommendation is to plan to sleep in your car and drive to where the prospects looks good for weather the day before. As far as accommodation is concerned, plan for many to be very expensive and not very available. There is the option of getting a hotel room somewhere outside the path and driving to the path the day before. Understand that the length of the eclipse is a factor, and you are not on, when you are not on the center line. The most important thing is to see the event, even if it isn't as long as where you can see it at its maximum. 25 seconds of total solar eclipse is better than none. I have seen 10 total solar eclipses and also went to 2 others which were clouded out. I have seen 4 annular eclipses, numerous partial eclipses, and at least a dozen and a half lunar eclipses, 2 transits of Venus and 6 transits now of Mercury. None of these other events compares to the experience of a total solar eclipse. It is a bucket list item without question. Total solar eclipses occur every year somewhere on the Earth. If you miss this one, you can certainly see another, but you'll have to travel to it. There will be another one in the United States in 2024, which will actually cross close to Detroit. It will be during the winter time, so the weather prospects are not as good as this one. The one in 2024, however, will be 4 minutes long, over 4 minutes. A longtime friend of mine came to me after seeing his first eclipse. As a matter of fact, that longtime friend is here, Alan Kaplan. And he said these words: "You have been telling me about how spectacular eclipses are for many years. After seeing this one, I have to admit, I had no idea." The first question one asked after seeing the total eclipse, as I said, is when's the next one? This gives you kind of a flyover of what's going on with this eclipse. This is a flyover of actually the United States, taken by a gentleman after 7. Again, you get to see this real briefly. And you can see all the other things about it. And it simulates the view of the moon shadow from an edge of space about 100 kilometers high. And there you see the coast of Oregon. And you can see where it is Oregon, what time it was, the length of the direction, the speed at which it's moving, and the path width. And you can just see it walking right across the United States. You can see it goes through Oregon, and then it goes through Idaho. And all along this thing, there's people that I know that are going to be in the Cascades, the Grand Tetons, rather. Tetons. I think Alan and Cheryl are supposed to be there. Is that correct?
Yep.
And you can see there's a lot of cities. And the nice feature about this eclipse is a lot of east-west routes. And that's very important if you want to get on the road and get going. There's Grand Tetons down there. And you can always go to Crowheart. And there's Wyoming. We're now going through Wyoming. You can see the length of the duration is increasing now. And you can see the speed is slowing. And this is the time, and of course the path width is not going to vary very, very much. Going through Nebraska. And I'm going to be in Casper, Wyoming, going to the Astronomical League conference the week before. And we have a very nice place to stay. And I'm going to give you one more thing at the end of this presentation. We're almost at the end now. As you can see, going through Nebraska, Grand Island. And you can see as the time that the duration is increasing continuously. And the speed is slowing down, but it's still moving at 1,500 miles per hour.
So you won't be able to drive and catch up with it.
No, and I'm going to give you something that's really kind of cool when we're done here.
Okay? You can see we're going right down there, 2 minutes and 39 seconds. Now it's getting near the Naxalin. You can see the speed is slowing down. And there's Jefferson City, Missouri. And it'll go right through Carbondale after Missouri. It's Illinois. Carbondale is right along here. There's Carbondale right there.
Kenny, why is the speed varies?
Because that's how the shadow emerges, and when it gets at a certain point, it depends on actually the distance from the moon a little bit. That's basically the reason. It first touches the Earth, and then it's moving along, and kind of deepens its way as it goes along, and that kind of slows it down. From what the dynamic, I cannot answer that question. Voting. There's Tennessee. Goes right near Nashville. So if you want to see the Grand Ole Opry, there's a good place to go. But you can see this nice east-west route. How about that? I thought this was a pretty nifty. And then you're going out through Charleston and out into the ocean. All right, so that kind of gives you an idea about it. We'll move on to one more thing. We aren't the only planet that gets to see eclipses. Even on Mars, that's the planet, the moon Phobos, that's actually going in front of the sun, seen by Curiosity. And that's our presentation for eclipses. Syzygy. Let me give you a couple of things you have to know, which are really important. How's that, 43 minutes? Pretty good. Okay. I have something for you that is spectacular that I just came upon. I have a dentist. His name is David Bando. Wonderful dentist. Extremely interested in eclipses. He has a friend that owns charter Lear jets. One that holds 8 people and one that holds 13 people. If we can fill up the plane, and by the way, driving there and doing all the things and trying to stay there, it's going to cost you a lot more than I'm about to tell you. If you go at $1,800 a person, you'll go out to Oakland or to one of the airports around here, get on that Lear jet and fly to the Eclipse. Well, I don't think he's going to fly to the Eclipse, he's going to fly to Carbondale probably first, but he's going to have his weather maps and everything like that, and that plane is going to catch up with where the clear skies are with that plane. And you fly with that plane, listen to this, you fly with that plane, and when you get off the plane at the airport, how many airports do you know with mountains that are right next to it? They're flat plane. You'll be able to see the entire eclipse from the field at the airport, get back on the plane and be back in Detroit later that evening for $1,800.
You're not going to watch the eclipse from the plane?
What?
You're not going to watch the eclipse from the plane?
No, it'll be on the ground. They're going to catch up to where the eclipse is. We already talked about it. The guy is ready to do it. He has the 2 jets. If we have him fill up the 1 jet, he'll take a second one. So the point is, if you're interested in that, you've got to give me your name, and you can even send it to my email if you want to. Get it syzygie@aol.com. You want to do something about it, I will get you in touch with this guy, and I'm telling you, you want to see a total solar eclipse. When I say bucket list, let me explain to you what the difference between a total solar eclipse and a partial eclipse is. Somebody raise your hand and tell me your favorite entertainer. Give me a name.
Bill Cosby.
Okay. How about if you're sitting in the front row of that concert, and all the way through the concert, the entertainer who you love and adore comes over to you and starts talking to you during the concert, just kibitzing with you in the front row. That's a total solar eclipse. The partial eclipse, 7 blocks away. All right? I can talk to you about this all day long, about how dynamic it is. As Alan said it best of all, I had no idea. I promise you, put it on your bucket list. You'll never regret it. Thank you very much. By the way, everybody gets one of these solar glasses. It's in here. I have plenty of them. You pick up the solar glasses. Again, if you stay in the Detroit area, you can certainly watch it. Again, if you go to the Eclipse site and you have the solar glasses, take them off at totality.
Ken, we have questions.
Any questions? Go ahead.
I don't mean to knock
Go
your
ahead.
offer.
Ask a question. What?
I don't mean to knock your offer because I am interested, but in the
event that a person's somewhere where it's cloudy, what will they see?
They will see, it gets dark. I was at the Faroe Islands in north of England in 2016, and it was dynamic in itself. If the clouds cover it, it gets dark. I mean, it gets really dark, and the people are going, huh, like that. And I said, man, you're missing the best part. Anyone else? Yes, sir, back there.
What determines the difference between a total solar eclipse and an annual eclipse? Is it like
Different distance of the moon from the Earth. The moon is greater than 235,000 miles away. It doesn't cover the entire photosphere. So that's an annual eclipse. If it's within 235,000 miles, you get totality.
is it determined on the orbit?
What's that? Yes, it does. It has a lot to do with it. And of course, the longer the eclipse, the closer the moon. Okay? Best eclipse is when they're real close. The moon is 225,000 miles away, and the sun is 91,000 miles away. So the longest eclipses are usually around June and July, because that's when they're. Yes, Jeffrey.
You showed a graphic of the various path cycles.
Yes.
They look like they were all in the northern hemisphere.
I'm sorry, say again.
Are there paths that go in the southern hemisphere?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Is it
Yeah, oh, yeah.
That was just one zero.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, the one in 1919 was Ceres 136, which was closing in on 7 minutes totality. It's the longest one. And we just had that one again in 2008. It happened in 1991. And some of you are young enough that you'll get to see the next Ceres of 136. It's very cool. But it's shortening as time goes along. So the last one was 638 or something. The one before the 656. The one before that in 1970s was 7 minutes and 6 seconds. The longest an eclipse can be is 7 minutes and 30 seconds. That's as long as it can be. None of us will live long enough to see another one of those. It's 2161.
And when the moon is closer to the Earth, then that's when it would be wider. How wide is what's the maximum width of a path?
250 miles.
250. Thank you.
It looks like there's a question in the middle of the room.
Yeah, we can go ahead.
The time range is going to be in Carbondale.
I showed it up there. I think it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
140.
140. Yeah, 140.
It starts at 11:30.
Yeah, and on the west coast, right.
I had a question. I was going to go to Carbondale. I went to school there in the 70s, so I'm familiar with the area, but I was thinking about, I want to draw on your experience. I thought about doing this kind of late in the game, and everything was booked around Carbondale. I was going to stay in St. Louis the night before, leave very early in the morning and drive to Carbondale.
Leave not early in the morning. Leave the day before. Sleep in your car.
That's why I thought.
Everybody's going to say, oh yeah, I'm going to run to the eclipse. You'll miss it.
Yeah, because I got a ticket for a parking lot there, and they open at 6, but it'd be better just to drive your car there and sleep in it.
That's exactly right. Yes, sir.
Comment about Carbondale. It gets totality in 2017, and it also gets totality in 2024.
Yes, correct. It's one of the
Both of them go through Carbondale.
It could be in the same place. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Doesn't happen.
Go buy a house.
Another question, because we have to leave. Anybody else? Yes, way back there. Speak it up.
How dark is it?
How dark does it get? Thanks, Danny. I appreciate that question. Very dark, and I'll reflect upon that. He had a law case a number of years ago.
It's dark as when the full moon is.
How dark was it going to get? I said to him, well, how do you measure dark? You know?
It's as dark as when the full moon is out, because the corona is as bright as the full moon.
Yes, that's correct.
All right,
Thank you
another
very
round
much.
of applause